This is the Livin' It podcast, featuring the CEO of the Richmond Flying Squirrels, Todd Parney Parnell. After 30-plus years in minor league baseball, he knows a few things.
Remember, I'm a product of the North Carolina public school system, Anthony. We're 48th in the country, but we won't even talk about that.
And a few people.
It's not name-dropping if you actually know the person. Like I was telling Tiger Woods the other day that I don't think it's name-dropping.
Now he's telling all, unfiltered.
I used to go absolutely ape.
From the Reckless Kelly tour bus to the Sandbridge Bar and NASCAR tailgates.
1, 2, Earnhardt 4.
He's always living it. Here's the host of the Livin' It podcast, Anthony Opperman.
Hello, Squirrels Nation, the world, podcast world. We're excited to be coming to you with a brand new podcast courtesy of the Richmond Flying Squirrels. It's called the Livin' It podcast, and it involves the one and only Todd Parney Parnell. He of 30-plus years in minor league baseball, and obviously a ton of stories to go along with that. Yeah, he's got the lines and the where to match it, but big guy, it's certainly an honor to go on this journey with you. And I think as we were kind of talking about this, for me, I see so many people coming into your office on a regular basis, reaching out. I mean, you've built such a wide network, and it's really, I'm not just saying this, like it is something to, I'm not just, doing this to float your ego a little bit here and lift you up in times of COVID, but it really, to me, is amazing. And after 30 years, I think some of it's worth like taking a look back and say, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to this point where, you've built this wide network? And I think a lot of it is based on this philosophy of living it, right?
Well, thank you, Anthony. You know I adore you, and it's going to be an honor and a privilege to do this with you. And welcome aboard, everybody. Go get a cocktail, get a beer. I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth. This is completely unplanned, but we'll have a good time. And it's funny, like the way you presented that, the way you framed it. On one hand, the 32 going on 33 years seemed like forever. And on another hand, it went through a blink of an eye. And when you go back and look at how some of these philosophies or Parneyisms, if you will, have come to the fruition, some of them go back directly to individual stories, and some of them just evolved over time. So it's funny. This will be a fun project for me as I enter the last the 16th, 17th, 18th holes of my career. This will be fun, and doing it with you, Anthony, will be a lot of fun because not only are we teammates, you're one of my best friends. So this will be a good time, and we want it to be a good time for you too, out there in Podcastville, which I don't even know where the hell that is.
It's gracing the wide expanses of the World Wide Web, big guy.
Okay,
we are.
Well, hello, India. Hello, Turkey. Hello, wherever you are.
Yeah, we're going international. Who knows? One day we could be interstellar. Maybe at some point somebody will be listening.
Do they have a podcast in Locust, North Carolina, my hometown? Can they watch it there? Or do they need electricity to watch a podcast?
Well, maybe we could fire up the generator and be able to get somebody to be able to watch the podcast there. We are going to do some video streaming of the podcast as well, so people can watch on the Flying Squirrels YouTube channel in addition to our podcast channels. But big guy, the title of this podcast that we kind of decided upon was the Livin' It podcast, because really, as somebody who knew you before I really knew you, that was one of the things about Parney, the Gert down in Myrtle Beach and State College in Altoona, was this philosophy of living it. And I remember sitting in the audience at job fairs and baseball winter meetings listening to you talk about this idea of living it. And I really, again, think that that's kind of a trademark throughout your professional life, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is kind of those business philosophies and operational philosophies. This is kind of geared a little bit more to like the LinkedIn crowd and the business crowd. So I guess the best place to start with this is,
let's go.
what is living it? What the hell are we talking about?
I don't know, man. I just do it every day. I don't have any idea. It's just, well, I think it's a couple different things. Number one, it is what it says it is. Living it. It's caring about who you are and what you're doing so that every minute of every hour of every day matters. When you live it, you're not just okay. When you're living it, you're not just getting through the day. When you live it, every meeting has got to be a win. Every meeting has got to be something that is positive. Every encounter with that person that you meet on the street needs to mean something to your personal brand, which through the years, I used to love it when Chuck Domino would say, well, when I met him, he was just Todd Parnell. That was before Parney, right? And everybody develops in their own life a personal brand. And then the living it part had a little bit to do with that, but it was mostly like when you represent a team, when you represent a brand, you represent them all the time. Not just a sports team, but whatever company you work for out there in Podcastville, you represent that company. And that's kind of where it came from. Like every single thing that you do is important. So you got to live it 24/7, 365.
And if you can tell by the subtle bumps that you hear in the microphone, Parney's very passionate about living it, so much so that he's literally pounding on the table. So
I would have been a great preacher if it wasn't for certain aspects of my lifestyle.
He was a church-going man at one point, ladies and gentlemen.
I still go to baseball chapel in case my mom and dad watch this. I still go to baseball chapel.
So, big guy, this idea of living it, where did that phrase come from? When did that click in your mind that this is what I'm calling this philosophy of wearing the brand and being on 24/7, 365?
So when you told me that we were going to start doing this, and what's funny about this is so many people have busted my chops through the years. Oh, you got to live it. Like Domino led the league, and you're not living it today. Where's your logo? So I started thinking, when you told me, I started thinking back, and that is one of those things. I said that some things you can point to a specific time and some things you can't. Like when I got into baseball, I was in between like being Todd Parnell and Parney, and Reading is when I became Parney. It's when it all started. I had a red sequin jacket. I was on the field with a microphone, and I became this 24-hour personality that became, and I'm thankful for this, beloved in the locker room, beloved in the community, beloved internally in the front office, and that's where all that started. But I can't really pinpoint a living it thing until maybe I went to Kannapolis for my first GM job, because the culture down there wasn't one of it was more like you had a job during the day and then everybody left, and during the off season there was an off season. You know me, Oppo, I don't believe in an off season. Like that's one of my key things, that there is no off season. We are a 12-month-a-year entity. Sorry, I'm banging the table again. So I think when we went to Kannapolis and we were the Piedmont Boll Weevils, and we came up with slogans like Unboll Weevable, and I recall there that I really encouraged people, because a lot of teams, and this might be a philosophical difference for some people, a lot of teams would say, hey, after a game, if you go out to a bar, you got to take off your logo, and I'm like, no, you wear that thing out there, and you tell people you work for the team, because it's on you not to act like a jackass, right? Like it's on you to represent the team in a positive way. So that's why, like somebody just made fun of me 2 days ago over the weekend. They called me a human billboard for the Flying Squirrels, and I said thank you. I mean, if I ever get fired from this job, I won't have a wardrobe. I just won't. So that's where it kind of went to, because we took our philosophy of regionalism to Kannapolis, a small town, home of Dale Earnhardt. Hey, 1, 2, Earnhardt 4. And we tried to regionalize down there, and that was important for people to live it, whether they were going to church, whether they were going to happy hour, no matter where they're going. And so that's kind of where it started.
So you kind of started this idea of living it and I guess you just answered my second question of what made you start using. I guess it just became out of necessity.
Well, it's a
with
culture.
Kannapolis, right?
I mean, I think it's a culture, and living it can mean different things. Like, it's changed for me over the years. Like, I used to write out living it vertically, right? Like, I would write it out, and L in one organization might mean laughter because the culture was too sterile. Or it might mean another word for another organization, all the way down, IVINIT. And I think it can mean different things for different people, but what it always has to mean is you're representing your brand all the time. And I think, like, some people, another thing that's kind of a sidebar, but like, especially some young people, I don't like to sell. What I say to them is, you're selling every single day of your life. You're selling your parents that you want to go to Clemson instead of South Carolina. You're selling your girlfriend or your boyfriend that you want to go to Cracker Barrel instead of IHOP, which both of those I feel are excellent choices. You don't get this body by not going to IHOP and Cracker Barrel.
Or some late night trips to Waffle House. That's on the itinerary
Beach
as well.
At 3 a.m. is on point. Joe T and I, we've had our share of Waffle Houses in the Richmond region at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I think that's all, it's what it means to each individual person. But again, it ties back to the brand, and I'm off point a little bit on what I think your question was. But it's just an important part of a culture. If you're going to develop an organization that means more to the people inside the organization, they all got to be cohesive and together. And part of living it is they all live it together. Does that make any sense? I mean, that's how it all started. Is kind of a splintered organization and getting something that they could all believe in. And in Kannapolis, it was something silly, like we were the Piedmont Boll Weevils, and I'm like, every time we name a team something like the Flying Squirrels, and the whole community goes absolutely ape, you know what? I go, well, we used to have a team called the Piedmont Boll Weevils, and a boll weevil is an insect that killed the cotton crop that sent the entire region into an economic recession. So no name is worse than that. And we became our slogan was unboll weevable. And I remember Pat McCrory walking into his office. He was the mayor of Charlotte. And I was, as outgoing as I am, I have doubts when, that things are working. You don't always think that everything you're doing is right. I walk into his office for a meeting when I was in Kannapolis, and he looked at me and said, well, look who it is, Mr. Unboll Weevable. And I went, okay, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is just, I have always taken my job very seriously, and I haven't taken and the duties that I have very seriously. But you got to laugh, and you can't take everything. We're a baseball team. We're not we're not curing diseases. I wish we could cure COVID. I sure as hell wish we could do that, but we can't. So I think it's a cultural thing that's important for everybody to buy in, and I think hopefully if it's done correctly, and it means different things to different people, it brings people closer together.
All right, so I'm going to go off script, and we're about to do this a lot throughout the range of this podcast.
Curveball,
yep,
go to
here
right
we come.
with it.
Yep. Better slow down the approach, take it the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about it's a cultural thing, and it was kind of bore out of that necessity to build that culture in Kannapolis that you wanted to establish down there. What happens? How do you handle it when you have people who don't buy into that philosophy and that culture of living it? And how has your approach to that changed?
That's a loaded question, because from
the
Kannapolis. I used to go absolutely ape. I know we're trying not to have me curse, but that's the only way that I can. I mean, I jack people up against walls. I've thrown baseballs at people. I didn't handle it well.
And thanks for leaning closer into the mic when you said that, by the way. We'll have to edit that in post.
We can bleep it out. It's fine. But I don't know if I've mellowed. Our really great friend Ben Rothrock calls it me getting soft. But I think we all learn, right? Like being a leader in business is like being a coach. Some people need a kick in the rear end. Some people need a hug. And I think as a leader of an organization, you have to figure out who needs that hug and who needs that kick in the rear end. I go back to Kannapolis again. That was an incredibly frustrating time for me because it was my first GM job, and getting people. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was doing it with somebody else's people. So that was a really tough thing, but that was the starting point for it. And we ended up building a brand down there that was never crazy successful from the standpoint of attendance. But it was a team in Kannapolis, North Carolina, ended up getting radio and TV coverage in the Charlotte market that was substantial, And we co-branded with a lot of people. And once Dale Earnhardt came on board and the Earnhardt brand, we cross-pollinated into NASCAR, and there's just a lot of really cool things that happened. And then, the people that worked on that staff, there's three people in leadership positions that, right off the top of my head, one's a GM in AA in minor league baseball and does a great job. So that's another thing that I just love about it, right? Like the watching, again, in some cases it's taken forever, and in some cases it was a blink of an eye, but see how some of these people have grown in their career. As again, I'm on the 16th hole of mine. That's truly one of my great joys. I mean, I love it. But to answer your question, I handle myself a lot differently now than I used to. I mean, I still get frustrated. I still lose my temper. But I do it in a way that's a lot more mature than I used to.
Was there a certain, how long, I guess, did it take for that evolution to take place? I mean, you could probably make the argument 33 years in, it's still evolving, right?
COVID, for example, has just been excruciatingly painful, and you know that. And I consider myself somebody that needs to be very positive. But I also consider myself someone like Mike Rob, who I love.
NFL Network analyst, former quarterback at Penn State.
He looked at me one
Super Bowl
night.
Champion.
He looked at me one night. I think we were right in here in the locker room, and he goes, "Man, you're one of the most authentic people I've ever met." And I took that as a huge, huge compliment. So when you're trying to be positive in COVID, and you're wired like I am, you don't want to feel fake, right? So I've changed the word fake to manufacture. Sometimes you got to manufacture your own positivity, right? But back to your question about, I'm all over the place, people. Just put your seatbelts on. I am evolving still, and COVID. To what reason I brought up COVID, it's made me change priorities. Like I hope it has everybody. One of the things that I'm sure we'll talk to in some episode is. Being a personal brand takes away some of your personal life. Because you got to be Parney all the time. You always got to be on. And in Richmond's case, I always got to wear my costume, which is my pants, right? So I can't really pinpoint a specific. I grew a ton here. The Parney you knew in 2010 is way different probably than the Parney you know in 2021. Kannapolis had a lasting effect on me. Certainly Altoona did. And then, bouncing around to Myrtle Beach State College and Altoona was a learning experience as well, because those people didn't know me in the other cities as much. So it was more. That's when I kind of transitioned a little bit into more of a coaching role, as opposed to, although here in Richmond I feel like I still do a lot of things, but it's more of an elder statesman thing. So I don't know, I think I'll be learning till the day I leave this business. And, as long as I wake up and I'm that little kid that went to a Charlotte Orioles game as a 10-year-old with my dad, as long as I'm always that guy when I get here in the morning, and COVID's hurt that. COVID sucked my soul out on many occasions. But when I walk through here at 6 a.m. or whatever, and I go into that locker room to do my 54-year-old medium fat workout every day, I need to feel excited about being here. And so that's kind of like the barometer. But anyway, I'm babbling now. So welcome to the babble part of the podcast, everybody. This is the time when you go to the bathroom or you go get another beer or another Tito's, which, by the way, Tito, that's going to cost you some money.
Yeah, we're still working on locking in those sponsorship deals as we move forward with this podcast. So there's a lot, though, that I wanted to unpack by what you just said. First and foremost, you have changed a lot since you and I first worked together back in 2009, I guess, was our really first time. The baseball is back.
The era of excess. We'll get to that sometime.
Most definitely. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, coming up here in this episode, too. But I left the organization, moved out to Colorado for a couple of years, went home to Texas for a couple of years, and then in December of 2016, I remember us having a conversation about me rejoining the organization in a little bit different role. I've been doing broadcasting media marketing the first stint, and then had discussed joining on the more of the promotions and marketing front. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't know if I've fully divulged this to you before, but sometimes we have to take drinks during this show too.
It's water, everybody. It's water. It's H2O. Don't worry about it.
I think our conversation and just kind of hearing about how you've evolved, and really how the Livin It philosophy has evolved was one of the reasons why I decided to come back. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, because it was different. I think before there was an intensity behind it, and there's still that intensity there, but I think there is a caring and compassion and an understanding of there being more to it than just the job, and you live it, but there's still other elements involved in living it. So I guess that's the other thing I wanted to kind of jump ahead to real quick. You talked about it can be exhausting being Parney. So how do you live it 24/7, 365, while also trying to balance being a dad, being there and available to your girlfriend Tanya, to her daughter Maddie, to your friends, to your family down in Locust, North Carolina? Yeah. Like, how do you go about balancing that? Because I think on the surface, anyone looking at it would say, well, if you're doing this 24/7, 365, then how does that leave any time for anything else?
I'll probably get emotional at this point. So, if you got any Kleenexes at home, this is probably the time you should go grab them, because I cry a lot. But
right out of the gates, this is what we're going for.
It's a tearjerker. This is not a Hallmark movie; it's a podcast. But I think the word that's become more important to me than ever over the last bunch of years is caring. Like, that's what I want to be known as, and living it. I think the biggest foundational principle in living it now, and there's not a C in living it, but it's caring. I mean, caring about what you're doing as a person, caring about what you're doing as a family man, caring about what you're doing as a professional, like really, really caring. And I made a lot of mistakes. There's things I look back on, when I was really intense, which was like the Kannapolis and the Altoona days. And I was 7 days a week. I never took my kids to school because I was at the ballpark by 5:30 in the morning. I was kind of like the John Gruden mentality. He wakes up at 3:17 and gets after it. So that, there are a few regrets that I have.
Except the difference with the John Grudens of the world is they do take a week or two to go on their vacations to some remote destination. Yeah. Parney does not take those kinds of vacations, or certainly didn't back in those days, right?
The old Parney didn't, and that's my kids never went on a summer vacation until my marriage to Kelly, their mother, ended, which was a large part because of my intense living it You know, I mean, look, as you get older, you got to admit when you made, you know, you did stuff, and you know, work was my drug, work was my obsession, and I was good at it, you know, but those are, you know, those are things that have helped me be better at it. Like anytime you fail at something, and I failed at marriage. Anytime you fail at something, you're better at it the second time. If you really care about what you're doing, you'll learn from it. And I think in my relationship with Tanya, who you mentioned earlier, I've learned a lot. You know, and certainly COVID. I've had dinner more with Tanya during COVID than I have had dinner with any human being ever in my entire life.
How do you like that? How's that been working out? Because that's, again, you're not used to having dinner, especially, you know, last summer when there was no baseball season, first time in 3 decades that you weren't working baseball games during the summer and you were at home for dinner. What was that?
It's been awesome. And I'm not just saying that because I know Tanya's going to watch this, and she terrifies me because she's in much better shape than me, and she could whoop my tail in anytime she wanted to. But I guess that's the point, is as I'm getting older now, I realize that living it applies not just to professional life. Living it applies to personal life, and you have to make sure, because I've never really had a lot of balance, but you got to make sure that you're including them. And Tanya's great. Like in the 8 years we've been together, Tanya's missed 2 Flying Squirrels games, and she doesn't stay all the time, but she has that. She puts that effort in too to connect to what we're trying to do here. You know, I think back to COVID times when we were working at home, and unfortunately we had to make some very tough decisions, and I had to have some very difficult phone calls, and some people that I love had to be furloughed or laid off, and I cried every single conversation because I care. So I'm not apologizing for that. But I walked, after I was done the last conversation, I got up and I walked into the kitchen where Tanya was. She had a stack of Kleenexes like this high. And I'm like, the hell's wrong with you? She goes, I had to listen to that for the last 3 hours. It was awful. I love those people too. So, you know, I just think, I forget what your question was now, but I think the caring aspect as a person has really grown, and I'm proud of that. Like when I die, I don't want people to remember me anymore as a minor league executive. And there was probably time in my life where I thought that I wanted that on my tombstone. Now I want it to be that he cared. You know, I care about Tanya. Obviously, Lindsay, my oldest, is, you know, she's the spitting image of me. You just said it. You said it to me the other day.
I did, yeah.
We were talking about her having lunch, and you're like, "Well, where'd she get that from?" And the same with Sammy, who I'm proud of. She works in minor league baseball. You know, I want to be dad. One of the things about living it is I became Parney to so many people, and I'm not proud of this. I feel like I'm at confession all of a sudden. When did this turn into a confession?
Well, it's kind of what this podcast is. I guess it's a manifesto of some sorts, an R-rated manifesto.
Yeah, not R-rated, PG-13.
Or-rated, like you're speaking it. You're speaking it.
Or-rated, got it. Remember, I'm a product of the North Carolina public school system, Anthony. We're 48th in the country, but we won't even talk about that.
All right, we're going to start keeping track of these Parneyisms as we go along, too, by the way.
What was I talking about, though? I was about caring, right? And you know, and that's about everything. You know, family. Before, I feel like, you know, I don't want Lindsay and Sammy and now Madison and Tanya to feel like I put work before them anymore. Certainly, Lindsay and Sammy had the right. I mean, they had every right to feel that way before. It got so at one point, like, in the evolution of living it and the evolution of Parney, that if you called me Todd, my neck wouldn't whip around. Unfortunately, if you said dad to me, sometimes, and this is painful to even say, sometimes, so some of the things I look back on now that hurt me the most is Lindsay and Sammy sometimes had to call me Parney for me to whip around to see my own kids. So, you know, when we're talking about living it and stuff like that, don't get lost in it so much that happens. Because now I just want to be a dad. I want to be a dad to them. So, like, I used to sign their cards on their birthdays, Parney, but now it's dad, and I really want to be, forever and ever their dad. I mean, I love them more than anything in the world, and same with Tanya, and I'm really proud of the relationship that I have with Maddie too.
So let's hit the rewind button, because we've talked a lot about kind of the evolution of Livin' It, but let's go back 11 years to the formation of the Richmond Flying Squirrels. And, I told you, a big part of the reason I came back to this organization was because I had heard in your voice this evolution that had taken place. Right. And then when I got back here, I saw with my own eyes this evolution and continue to see it, which is why I have a lot of respect for you, because there are a lot of people who, especially as they get older in their careers, they're established, and you're as established in your industry as anyone that has really ever worked in this baseball business and really sports entertainment business. But it's real. It's genuine. Like, you don't have to go very far. I mean, I overheard you telling a story just the other night about, Scott Rowland, when he was playing with the, what was it, with the Phillies at that point?
He should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way. Scott Rowland, you should be in the Hall of Fame.
But that, somebody had mentioned that they knew Parney, and Scott Rowland, gave them attention, signed to baseball just because they knew you, and he in that moment remembered you. So I mean, there's endless examples of that, and that's another episode coming up down the line. So I don't want to get too far.
Will that be our name dropping episode?
It will be the name drop episode. We're going to call it relationship building, but it'll essentially just be the Parney name drop.
I always feel like it's not name dropping if you actually know the person. Like I was telling Tiger Woods the other day that I don't think is name drop.
Yeah, there's Parneyism number 2, so we're well on our way. But again, we've talked a lot about that evolution. I've seen it, and I respect you for that. However, I would make the argument, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can debate me on this, but I would make the argument that we got the Livin' It Parney in Richmond at just the right time. That maybe if this Parney, now 11 years into the Flying Squirrels experiment, had showed up in 2009 to take on this great challenge that was in front of this entire organization, that maybe the Flying Squirrels wouldn't be what they are, and maybe Parney wouldn't be what you know him as today in this community, and certainly, to a larger extent, in the industry. But again, you can debate me on that one, but I think...
I mean, I like a good debate, but I agree with you. I mean, the timing was perfect for everybody. When Lou DiBella, who I had known from my Altoona days, and Domino got together, which that in and of itself was fate. And then when Domino called, Domino told me that he had already told Lou I'd taken the job before he had even asked me if I wanted to take the job, right? So, I mean, it was like Richmond needed something, and I needed something at that point. That was right when I started to go through my personal stuff with my ex-wife, and I had 2 kids, and Richmond happened to me at the perfect time. I had the ability to be out and be Parney, as much as it hurt not to be around my kids. I would say that your assessment of that is correct. And one thing that I also think was really helpful is I fell in love with this town immediately. And one thing that always bugged me is people that lived here for a long time didn't really see all the good. Right? Sometimes it takes a new set of eyeballs.
Yep.
And I remember getting into arguments in local establishments that we used to attend.
A lot of them. Multiple ones in any given night.
I mean, we would leave this room at 9 o'clock at night after working for 14 hours. We'd all go shower, and then we'd meet in local taverns, and that's how we built this brand up. That's literally how we built the brand. We called it the era of excess.
Well, while we're on that subject, though, what role did Livin' It have in building the Flying Squirrels brand in Richmond? I know you just touched on it a little bit there, and kind of how you have that freedom and flexibility to be Parney, but how essential was Livin' It to the Flying Squirrels becoming the Flying Squirrels that people know and love in Richmond?
Well, we established our 3 core values, which were be different, be fun, and be impactful. Once we got the brand, and some people loved it and some people didn't. We wore it on our sleeve, literally, everywhere we went. And I think that helped grow it. And we believed in it, and we knew it was going to be right. And people that doubted us, we would literally laugh in their face. Not disrespectfully, but I mean, I remember saying to people in bars, like, I'd buy them a drink because they'd tell me that we were the stupidest people in the world. I'm like, let me buy you a drink, and I'll tell you that we're not. And I would say, just give us a chance. And then they would still talk back at me, and I would be like, listen, when you bring your grandson to your 6th game this year, I want you to hunt me down and tell me that I was right. And I can't tell you how many times that happened. It happened so many times where I would look over to the side and I'd see somebody waiting to talk to me. And then I would say, hey, how you doing? And I'm Parney. Oh, I know who you are. Or, we met at such a place, and I told you that the Squirrels would never be successful. And this is my grandson, Timmy. And, we've been to 10 games so far. So that whole process, but part of living it is believing it. Like, you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in your teammates. Like, I believe in you. You got to believe in what you're doing. Like, if you don't believe in what you're doing, you're not going to be successful. That's all part of living it.
We're going to talk more about building the brand in another episode. If you haven't noticed yet, by the way, we're going to have several of these episodes. We're not planning for this to be a real short run.
So wake up, everybody. Wake up.
We're hoping not to get canceled too soon or to have someone pull the plug on us.
I've been on pretty good behavior so far, I would think.
You really have, yeah. There's only one bleep that we'll have to try and mix in there. But we'll talk more about building a brand. But, yeah, I mean, to your point, though, earlier, like, I think there was a lot of people, because here especially, and again, I don't want to get off topic to take too much thunder from the Building the Brand episode of this, but there were a lot of people who were used to the Richmond Braves for decades and decades and traditional names, and we came in and said we were going to be different. We said we were going to be the Flying Squirrels, and people absolutely hated it and thought we were nuts. And there was that arrogance a little bit. I mean, it was.
I prefer to call it swagger.
But there was also that we knew because we had seen it work before and they hadn't experienced it in Richmond.
Yeah.
So we knew it was going to work. And that bravado, I guess, was kind of evident in everything that we did and everywhere we went and every interaction, I guess. And that's where it kind of ties back into living it. And to your point about believing in it, because we did, and we weren't shy about it. We weren't bashful about it. We were proud to be I remember in 2009 when, it was announced baseball is back, and every establishment we went into, Richmond, baseball's back. We're back. We're here. And
they weren't used to it.
They weren't. They weren't. But that was part of living it, and then kind of building that camaraderie too, which was so important. And I guess so. Maybe let me ask you that. Compare, contrast that culture that was established in Richmond in 2009, going to that inaugural 2010 season, when you took over this or helped take over this operation, versus that very first one in Kannapolis, when you were going in to some degree trying to change some of those similar mindsets and stereotypes.
Well, I was alone completely.
Yeah.
In Kannapolis. I mean, I literally was hired by the late Larry Hedrick. He passed away during COVID. God rest his soul. Wonderful guy. And Del Unser, if you remember that name, from the Philadelphia Phillies, he had recommended me. I was with Chuck Domino in Reading. I'd had a goal, Anthony. I don't know if I ever told you this. I had a goal that I wanted to have my own team by the time I was 30. That was just a goal that I had. I just had turned 30. So I was like 30 years old and maybe 3 months or something like that. So I literally just got dropped right in the middle of that organization, and there was nothing wrong with them. They were great people, and it just was in the middle of the Charlotte market in a town called Kannapolis, and they just stayed there. And you can't grow. You have to regionalize, right? And so that was a difference. Here I had Chuck, who's an important part of my entire career, and then we kind of melted the pot together with different people. Bill Paperniak, obviously, Tommy Denlinger, who's another guy who's gone on to great things. Brandon Green came in later, who's gone on to great things. We have Ben Terry, who was a holdover from the Braves, who's still here. Brendan Porter, who's now running the team in Montgomery. There's a lot of people from that roster, I'll call it, that are doing great things like you are and doing great things in other places too. I liken the Richmond first staff is kind of like when you win a World Series. That's a group of people that you never forget.
Yeah.
I'm getting choked up again. That's a group of people that are always going to be special. And I remember when people used to tell us, thank you for bringing baseball back. That's something that meant a lot and still does.
There's still the sign at the annual Richmond Christmas parade. There's the family that has the sign that says, thank you for bringing baseball back.
If you recall, every year when we see those folks, I jump off the float and get my picture taken with them because that means a lot to me. And you know, when we came here with that group of people, we didn't want to be just a baseball team. We wanted to be an integral part of the community 12 months out of the year, and living it is how we made that part of the way that we made that happen, and that's what I'm proud of. Am I proud of the attendance records? Am I proud of all the accolades that we as an organization? Yeah, of course I am. But when somebody stops me in the grocery store and thanks us for what we do, that's what means something to me. When somebody says you were nice to my dad before he passed away at an event, thank you for doing that, or my dad took a picture of your World Series ring. Like that's what matters to me, and maybe that's one of the differences in me from early on when I was so focused on, making the organizations that we were with, lead in attendance and all that stuff. That's great, but it's all the process of living it and the process of doing what's right by other people. Like if you do that now, the results will come. And I talk about this with Mike Rhodes all the time.
Head coach at VCU men's basketball program.
Yeah, who's just a dear friend. And
name drop.
Yeah, it is a name drop. But it's not really a name drop if you know them. Like,
right.
I'm going to fight you on that. Like, if you know the people well as I do, it's not a name drop. But anyway.
We're going to have a whole episode dedicated to it because you can drop a whole lot of them.
We'll just go through my phone someday and we'll just play roulette with my phone and I'll tell you a story about all those people. But I think one of the things that's evolved is, for me now, others before self is so important, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're such a community organization. Like Domino used to always make fun of me over the start at yes and work backwards from there. I know he didn't mean it, but start at yes and work backwards from there has been such a huge part of what we're about. It gets you in trouble sometimes, because you can't do everything for everybody. It's just not humanly possible. But I think that has meant a lot to this organization, and that has meant a lot to this community. And even during COVID, the amount of people that respect us for in our most dire of financial circumstances, of which we're still in. I mean, think about it, business owners. We haven't had any real revenue since September 7th, 2019. And now it's 2021.
February, yeah. 2021.
And by the time we play a game, it's going to be a good 18, 19 months. So I think we've done great as far as our commitment. And again, a lot of that comes back to caring more about other people than you do about yourself. And one of the things that's frustrating to me is because of the way that I am, and I say this to a lot of my very close friends, like the way that I am and the pants and the big personality and the big guy and all that kind of stuff, people automatically judge me for being self-centered or cocky or a media, I was going to say, well, I can't say that.
Right.
A media.
Right. Mogul.
Yes. It wasn't mogul. Rhymed with door, but anyway.
Right. Hound.
Yeah, media hound.
We'll go with that. Yeah, we'll go with
hound.
that. Yeah.
But I'm really not. And I never really have been. and I'm kind of proud of that too. I don't know where I was going with that comment. I just completely lost it because I was trying to think of other words to say.
Well, obviously we could go on and on and on for hours and hours and hours, and we will, because there'll be hours and hours and hours of this podcast, but it'll be broken up over multiple different episodes. And you brought up the pants there, and Big Guy, I think that's where we're going to go with the next episode, is kind of the story of the pants, because for those who don't know Parney, he has become known for his pants, but believe it or not, and there was a time that I knew you when you didn't wear crazy pants. That Parney actually showed up to games wearing khakis. And if you go back and look at those photos now, it's actually really strange to see you wearing khakis.
It's so funny. I was walking out today to go to a meeting, and I saw the picture from our very first game that's hanging in the main lobby. And I was wearing, first of all, I could still tuck my shirt in then, which was really nice. And secondly, I had khakis on, and I just smiled. I'm like, because, nowadays I wear these pants every day to work. And when Tanya and I go out on the weekends, I still have to wear my pants. Because people get upset, and if they see me now, when I travel, I don't wear them. I can't tell you how many people have seen me in the Atlanta airport or wherever. Where's your pants? Why aren't you wearing your crazy pants? But so that's all part of living it for my personal brand, which is my personal brand is tied and integrated into the Squirrels brand so much that they're really one and the same at this point.
All that and more coming up on episode 2 as we go behind the pants and tell you that there's actually more to the story than just those pants, and there's more to the man behind the pants, because I know you call them your clown pants all the time, but there's more to that clown. There's something behind that makeup, so that's going to be coming up.
Not like the chocolate Easter bunny that you eat with when you cut them in half. There's nothing on the inside.
Right.
We got some substance here, people.
Yeah,
you just maybe don't know about it yet.
They will, though, after episode 2, and we kind of go with behind the pants. But Big Guy, it was fun kicking this off, and looking forward to our discussions in the coming episodes, and just continue to talk about this philosophy. But again, it all revolves around living it, and I think that's going to be the theme. That's why we wanted to start right there with episode 1, because I think for people who listen on a consistent basis, they are going to be able to pick up on those themes throughout everything that we talk about.
You got to live it, everybody. Make every day the most important day of your life.
You never get that day back, right?
No.
Never get it twice.
Like today's what? February the 11th?
Today's February 11th.
2021.
Right.
You only get one February 11th, 2021 your entire life. You're going to win it or you're going to lose it. You got to win it.
And with that, I think we should leave it there. Yep. Let's leave it there. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in for the first episode of the Livin' It podcast with the VP and COO of the Richmond Flying Squirrels, the one, the only Todd Parnell, the big guy. Appreciate it. Had fun. I'm Anthony Opperman. Probably should have told you that at the very beginning of this, but I'll be your host for this podcast and looking forward to many, many more.
Anthony Opperman.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Have fun. Go nuts. Have fun. Go nuts.